The vintage wine glass slipped from my grasp when I heard my husband of 15 years and his personal assistant plotting in the garden of my own birthday celebration. After the divorce papers are signed, we can finally go public with our relationship, James said, oblivious to my presence behind the rose trellis. Wine splashed across my new dress, but the stain meant nothing compared to the ice-cold betrayal that froze my heart in that moment. What these two conspirators didn't realize was that I wasn't just the devoted wife they thought they could discard. I was about to become the new director of operations at Lumina Technologies, the very company where my husband and his mistress thought they were untouchable. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. I'd love to know which corner of the world you're watching from, and if this story resonates with you, please subscribe. Tomorrow's video reveals what happened when I finally confronted them both. The evening had begun perfectly, or so I believed. Our lakeside home in Westlake Hills sparkled with elegant decorations for my 40th birthday celebration. The guest list included everyone who mattered in Austin's tech and business circles, a world I had helped my husband James navigate since we met in graduate school at Stanford, 17 years ago. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs months earlier. James had insisted on organizing the entire party himself, a complete departure from his usual hands-off approach to social events. He typically delegated even our anniversary dinner reservations to his ever-efficient personal assistant, Natalie. "Carson, Victoria, you deserve to be surprised for your milestone birthday," he told me with that charismatic smile that had first caught my eye across a crowded lecture hall years ago. "Just wear that burgundy dress we bought in Milan, and leave everything else to me." I had been touched by his apparent thoughtfulness, interpreting it as a renewal of the attention that had gradually disappeared from our marriage. How desperately I had wanted to believe that James was finally prioritizing our relationship after years of putting Lumina Technologies first. The cybersecurity firm he'd built from scratch had become his obsession, consuming his weekends, evenings, and eventually, it seemed, his capacity for genuine emotional connection. The party was in full swing when I excused myself from a conversation with investors to find the powder room. Our sprawling home had multiple hallways branching from the main entertaining space, and I took the less-traveled path past James's home office, a route the caterers and other guests weren't using. That's when I heard their voices, hushed but distinct in the relative quiet of the garden terrace outside his office windows. "The prenuptial agreement is airtight, but I still want to proceed carefully," James was saying, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he used when closing business deals. "Victoria has never shown any real interest in the company's operations, but we can't risk her suddenly deciding she deserves a piece of Lumina just because she attended a few investor dinners over the years." Natalie's response came with a soft laugh that I'd never heard before. Intimate, familiar. "Don't worry, I've already spoken with Gerald. Once the papers are filed next week, we'll implement the full contingency plan. The board won't have any reason to question the transition." My heart raced as I instinctively stepped closer to the open terrace doors. Through the gauzy curtains I could see them, James leaning against the stone balustrade while Natalie stood close to him, her hand resting casually on his chest in a gesture that spoke of long-established intimacy. "I hate that we still have to pretend at her party," Natalie continued, reaching up to straighten James's custom-made tie. "But it's the last time." James smiled, capturing her hand and kissing it. "Patience, sweetheart. We've planned too carefully to risk everything with impulsivity now. Victoria has her charity galas and social committees. She'll be fine with the settlement I'm offering, and she'll never understand what we're building at Lumina anyway." The vintage wine glass I'd been carrying slipped from my suddenly numb fingers, shattering against the slate patio and splashing Cabernet across the hem of my dress. The sound froze the conspirators in place as I stepped into full view, wine dripping onto the imported limestone threshold of the terrace. Please don't let me interrupt what is clearly the real celebration of the evening, I said, my voice steadier than I would have thought possible as shock gave way to an icy clarity. James recovered first, his expression shifting from panic to the smooth, placating smile he used to diffuse tense negotiations. Victoria, you're misunderstanding what you've heard. Natalie and I were discussing a sensitive corporate restructuring that coincidentally involves divorce papers, relationship announcements, and prenuptial agreements? I cut him off, watching as Natalie took a strategic step away from James, suddenly very interested in straightening papers on the outdoor table. I may not run a tech empire, James, but I'm not stupid. Of course you're not stupid, darling, he said, approaching me with hands extended as if calming a hysterical child. You're just emotional right now and hearing fragments of a complex conversation without context. Do not darling me, I said, stepping back from his reach. Wine continued to drip from my dress, staining the travertine pavers that Natalie had helped select during our recent landscape renovation, a detail that now took on a completely different meaning. And do not insult my intelligence by continuing this charade. Natalie finally spoke, her professional mask firmly back in place. I should give you two privacy to discuss this. Perhaps I should check on the guests. Stay exactly where you are, I commanded, surprising myself with the authority in my voice. If you're planning to take my place professionally and personally, as you put it, then you should be part of this conversation. James's expression hardened, the charm evaporating as he recognized his carefully crafted plan was unraveling. This isn't how I wanted you to find out, Victoria, but perhaps it's for the best. We can discuss the details with the lawyers and avoid any unnecessary drama. Unnecessary drama? I repeated, a disbelieving laugh escaping me. You orchestrated my birthday party, filled with our friends, colleagues, and business associates, as cover for planning your exit strategy with your mistress, and you're concerned about unnecessary drama? The garden fell silent as the weight of the situation settled around us. In the distance, I could hear the string quartet playing and the murmur of guests enjoying what they thought was a celebration of my life. The irony wasn't lost on me. While they toasted to my health and happiness, my marriage was dying in this secluded garden terrace. James sighed, glancing at his watch in a gesture so dismissive that something broke permanently inside me. We should rejoin the party. We can discuss this tomorrow with clear heads. There's nothing to discuss tomorrow that you haven't already decided today, I interrupted, a new resolve forming from the ashes of my shock. But you're right about one thing. We should rejoin the party. After all, you've gone to such trouble to arrange it. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel now. Back to where we left off. I turned and walked away, heading to the nearest powder room where I methodically rinsed the wine stains from my hands and blotted at my ruined dress. In the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Her eyes held a clarity and determination I hadn't seen in years. For too long, I had allowed myself to become a supporting character in James's success story. The woman in the mirror reminded me that I had once had ambitions of my own before I set them aside to help build James's dreams. What my husband and his mistress didn't know, what they had never bothered to discover, was that I had been quietly maintaining my professional connections over the years. While they dismissed me as merely a social asset, I had been serving on the boards of 2 tech startups, privately advising female entrepreneurs, and completing an advanced certificate in corporate governance that I had initially pursued to better understand James's business. Most significantly, I had recently been approached by Elena Chen, the founder and outgoing CEO of Solaris Networks, Lumina's biggest competitor, about potentially taking over as their director of operations when she restructured her executive team. Elena, unlike James, had recognized my strategic thinking and industry insights during the charitable foundation galas we both frequently attended. As I repaired my makeup with steady hands, a plan began to crystallize in my mind. James and Natalie thought they were dealing with a decorative, disposable wife who would quietly accept whatever settlement they deigned to offer. They had severely underestimated their opponent. I rejoined the party with a smile that revealed nothing of what had transpired. I moved through the crowd, accepting birthday wishes with gracious nods, all while my mind catalogued everyone in attendance who might become valuable allies in what I now recognized as an inevitable corporate war. "Are you enjoying your party, Mrs. Blackwood?" asked Gerald Thompson, the very lawyer Natalie had mentioned in their conversation, and a man I had never particularly trusted despite his long professional relationship with James. "Immensely," I replied, clinking my fresh wine glass against his. "It's amazing how revelatory birthdays can be, don't you think? They have a way of clarifying one's priorities." Gerald shifted uncomfortably under my steady gaze. Indeed, milestone moments often inspire reflection and action. "It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it," I added meaningfully, before drifting away to speak with Elena Chen, who was conversing with several board members from Solaris. "Victoria, radiant as always," Elena greeted me warmly. "Have you had a chance to consider our discussion from last week?" I smiled, aware that James was watching from across the room as he performed the role of devoted husband for our guests. "Actually, Elena, I believe I'm ready to give you my answer. Perhaps we could meet for breakfast tomorrow to discuss the details." Elena's eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. I had been deliberately non-committal when she first approached me, expressing doubts about whether I wanted to take on such a demanding role. "Wonderful. The Lakeside Grill at 8:30? Perfect," I confirmed, already envisioning James's face when he discovered that his soon-to-be ex-wife was about to become the director of operations of his largest competitor. The evening continued its elaborate facade, with James making a touching speech about our years together, and presenting me with an extravagant diamond bracelet that the assembled guests oohed and awed over appropriately. I accepted it with a convincing show of delight, all while calculating how I would liquidate it to fund the first phase of what was rapidly becoming a comprehensive strategy for both personal and professional rebirth. As the last guests departed, shortly after midnight, James loosened his tie and poured himself a generous scotch. Natalie had left earlier, ostensibly to coordinate with the cleaning service scheduled for morning, though we both knew she was retreating to avoid the confrontation that hung in the air like a thundercloud. "I assume you want to talk now?" James said, not meeting my eyes as he swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler. "Actually, no," I replied, removing the diamond bracelet and placing it carefully in its velvet box on the coffee table between us. "I think you and Natalie have done all the talking necessary. I'll be staying at the Lakeview Hotel for the next few days while I make arrangements for a new residence." James looked up, surprised by my calm demeanor. He had clearly expected tears, recriminations, perhaps even pleading. My composed response clearly unsettled him more than any emotional outburst would have. "Victoria, be reasonable. This house has 6 bedrooms. There's no need for you to leave while we sort things out. And those diamonds are yours. I don't want them back." I studied him for a moment. This man I had loved and supported for 15 years, trying to pinpoint exactly when he had become a stranger to me. "I'm not leaving because there isn't enough space, James. I'm leaving because I refuse to spend another night under the same roof as someone who could orchestrate such a betrayal with such calculated precision." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I never meant to hurt you. These things just happen sometimes. Natalie and we connect on a level that—" "Please spare me the cliches," I interrupted, gathering my purse and the overnight bag I had discreetly packed while he was saying goodbye to the final guests. "You didn't just happen to fall in love with your secretary? You didn't just happen to plan my birthday party as cover for finalizing your divorce strategy. You made deliberate choices, James, every step of the way." He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before his expression hardened again. "Fine. We'll do this however you want. Gerald will contact you tomorrow with the settlement offer. I think you'll find it's quite generous. I paused at the door, looking back at the life I was walking away from, the art we had collected together, the photographs from happier times, the space we had created that had never quite become the home I had longed for. I'm sure I will, I said quietly. But you should know that I won't be accepting it. James's expression darkened. Don't make this difficult, Victoria. The prenup is airtight. You're entitled to support, but Lumina is completely protected. I smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unnerve him even more than my composure. I'm not interested in taking Lumina from you, James. I have other plans. With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, I left our house for the final time, the door closing behind me with a definitive click. In the car, I allowed myself exactly 30 seconds of grief for the marriage and the life I had thought we were building. Then I straightened my shoulders, dried my eyes, and began composing a mental list of what needed to be accomplished before my breakfast meeting with Elena. By the time I reached the hotel, Victoria Blackwood, trophy wife and social accessory, had begun her transformation into the woman who would soon remake the entire cybersecurity industry landscape. James and Natalie had no idea what they had set in motion with their whispered plans at my birthday party, but they would learn, along with everyone else who had underestimated me, exactly what I was capable of. The betrayal still burned a hollow in my chest that I suspected would remain for some time. But alongside it, something new was taking root, a sense of purpose and determination I hadn't felt since my ambitious days at Stanford, before I had sublimated my own dreams to support James's. As I checked into my hotel room and kicked off my heels, I realized with startling clarity that while the end of my marriage was painful, it might also be the making of me. The lakeside grill exudes quiet luxury, the kind designed to make power players feel comfortably inconspicuous as they negotiate deals over perfectly prepared eggs Benedict and French press coffee. I arrived 15 minutes early for my breakfast with Elena Chen, determined to project the confidence and composure of someone who hadn't had her world shattered less than 12 hours earlier. Mrs. Blackwood, welcome. The hostess greeted me with practiced warmth. Ms. Chen called to say she's running a few minutes behind schedule but has reserved her usual table for you. Perfect. The extra time would allow me to organize my thoughts and review the mental list of conditions I'd developed during a mostly sleepless night at the Lakeview Hotel. I ordered a double espresso and water, watching as the restaurant gradually filled, with Austin's elite tech executives, media moguls, and entrepreneurs all conducting their morning business with hushed intensity. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Gerald will call you at 10 a.m. to discuss settlement terms. Please be reasonable, Victoria. I switched my phone to silent and slipped it back into my purse without responding. James still believed this was a negotiation, that I could be managed, placated, and ultimately dismissed with the right financial package. His fundamental misunderstanding of my character would be his undoing. Victoria, forgive my tardiness, Elena said, appearing at my table with her characteristic energy. At 62, the founder of Solaris Networks maintained the vitality of someone 20 years younger, her keen eyes missing nothing as she assessed my appearance. You look remarkably composed for someone who just hosted a major social event. If only she knew. I've always recovered quickly, I replied with a small smile. Thank you for meeting me on such short notice. Elena signaled for coffee before leaning forward, her expression shifting to the focused intensity I'd observed when she discussed business. I was pleasantly surprised by your message last night. You've been non-committal about the operations. Director position for months. I've had a revelation about my priorities, I said carefully. Let's just say I've realized it's time to fully utilize my capabilities rather than continuing to support others in achieving their ambitions. Something in my tone must have revealed more than my words, because Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. I see. And does this revelation have anything to do with James? I considered my response carefully. Elena and James moved in the same professional circles, though their companies were fierce competitors. Revealing too much about my personal situation could create complications, but providing no context might make my sudden interest in the director position seem suspiciously capricious. James and I are separating, I said simply. It's been coming for some time, though the timing has only recently been clarified. But my interest in Solaris is professional, not personal. I believe I can lead the operations team into areas James has consistently overlooked. Elena nodded slowly, neither offering condolences nor asking for details, one of the qualities I'd always appreciated about her. You mentioned on previous occasions that you felt Lumina had vulnerabilities in their approach to certain markets, she observed. Yes, I confirmed, grateful for the shift to business matters. James has always prioritized government contracts and financial sector clients. He's built Lumina's infrastructure around the needs of those high-value, high-security customers. Strategy that has served them well, Elena noted. They've dominated those sectors for years. At the expense of the broader market, I countered, warming to the subject. There's an enormous untapped opportunity in mid-sized businesses that need sophisticated security solutions but can't afford Lumina's premium pricing structure. Additionally, James has consistently dismissed the consumer security market as unprofitable despite growing evidence to the contrary. Elena smiled slightly, the expression of a chess player who recognizes a complementary strategic mind. And you believe Solaris should move aggressively into those spaces? I believe Solaris is perfectly positioned to do so, I clarified. Your core technology is as robust as Lumina's, but your infrastructure is more adaptable. You've cultivated a corporate culture that values innovation over tradition, and unlike James, you've never dismissed smaller markets as beneath your attention. The waiter arrived with our breakfast, providing a natural pause in the conversation. I realized I was genuinely hungry, the adrenaline of the past 12 hours having burned through whatever calories I'd managed to consume at my own birthday party. As we ate, Elena outlined Solaris's current position, their strengths, challenges, and the board's vision for the company's future. I listened attentively, mentally cataloging areas where my knowledge of Lumina's operations might provide strategic advantages. The board is unanimous in wanting you for this position, Elena said finally, setting aside her empty coffee cup. Your background in both business strategy and cybersecurity governance is precisely the combination we need. The question is whether you're prepared to take on a role that will inevitably put you in direct competition with your husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband, I corrected her. And yes, I'm more than prepared for that reality. In fact, I welcome it. Elena studied me for a moment, perhaps recognizing the steel beneath my composed exterior. May I ask what changed? When we last discussed this position, you expressed concern about potential conflicts with your marriage. I took a sip of water, buying myself a moment to frame my response honestly without revealing the humiliating details of what had transpired. Let's just say that James has made it abundantly clear that he no longer considers our marriage a priority. He's apparently been planning an exit strategy for some time, with his personal assistant playing a key role in both personal and professional capacities. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly, but she maintained her professional demeanor. I see. I'm sorry for the personal distress that must cause, but from Solaris's perspective, your newfound freedom to pursue this role is fortuitous. Timing for me, as well, I agreed. Though I do have several conditions that would need to be met before I could accept the position. Of course, what are you looking for? I outlined my requirements. Complete autonomy in restructuring the operations team, a significant equity stake in the company, rather than just salary compensation, and a guaranteed minimum 3-year contract, regardless of initial market reactions to my appointment. The equity stake is standard for an executive position, Elena acknowledged. The autonomy in team building shouldn't be an issue given that several key executives are retiring alongside me. The 3-year guarantee might raise eyebrows with some board members, but I believe I can persuade them given your unique qualifications. There's one more thing, I added, meeting her gaze directly. I want the announcement of my appointment to be made immediately before rumors of my separation from James become public. I want the market and industry to view me as Victoria Blackwood, new director of operations at Solaris Networks, not as James Blackwood's soon-to-be ex-wife. Elena nodded slowly, understanding the strategic importance of controlling this narrative. That's sensible from both a personal and business perspective. We've been planning to announce my executive team restructuring next week. We could accelerate that timeline and announce the transition of leadership by tomorrow morning if the paperwork can be expedited. It can, I assured her, mentally calculating the sequence of events that would need to unfold. I'll clear my schedule today for whatever meetings are necessary with the board and legal team. As we wrapped up breakfast, Elena extended her hand across the table. Welcome to Solaris, Victoria. I have a feeling this partnership is going to reshape our industry. I shook her hand firmly, feeling for the first time since overhearing that devastating conversation at my birthday party that I was taking control of my own narrative. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Elena. By the time I returned to my hotel suite, 3 voicemails from James awaited me, each more irritated than the last. The final one contained an unmistakable note of patronizing concern. Victoria, this isn't like you. Gerald has been trying to reach you all morning. We've prepared a very generous settlement package, but we need to move quickly to avoid unnecessary complications. Call me back. I deleted the messages without responding and turned my attention to preparing for my meetings with Solaris's board. My phone rang again, James again, but I silenced it and set it aside. Let him wonder. Let him worry. His assumptions about my predictability would be the first of many miscalculations. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, legal discussions, and strategic planning sessions. Solaris's board, composed primarily of tech industry veterans, and 2 former government cybersecurity officials, subjected me to rigorous questioning about my vision for the operations division, my technical knowledge, and my readiness to take the helm of a publicly traded corporation's operations. You must be aware that your connection to James Blackwood will raise questions, said Malcolm Winters, the board's most senior member, his penetrating gaze assessing my reaction. The industry will speculate about whether this appointment represents a personal rather than professional decision. I expect nothing less, I acknowledged, meeting his eyes directly. But speculation will be quickly overshadowed by results. My knowledge of the competitive landscape, including Lumina's blind spots, provides Solaris with an unprecedented opportunity to capture market share in sectors that James has consistently overlooked. By 6 p.m., the agreements were signed. I would officially become Director of Operations at Solaris Networks, effective immediately, with a public announcement scheduled for 8 a.m. the following morning. As I signed the final document, a profound sense of rightness settled over me. I had spent 15 years helping James build his empire. Now I would build my own. I returned to the hotel to find a package waiting for me, divorce papers delivered by courier, along with a settlement offer that was indeed generous by conventional standards. I set them aside unopened. James's timetable was no longer my concern. Instead, I spent the evening preparing for my first day at Solaris, reviewing the company's organizational structure, recent performance metrics, and product development pipeline. When I finally climbed into bed shortly after midnight, exhaustion claimed me within minutes, providing the first dreamless sleep I'd experienced since the fateful birthday party. The next morning, I awoke to the news alert I had been anticipating. Breaking. Elena Chen restructures Solaris Networks' executive team, names Victoria Blackwood as Director of Operations. The accompanying article included a formal statement from Elena praising my strategic vision and technological expertise, with no mention of my personal connection to Lumina's CEO. My phone immediately began buzzing with messages. Congratulations, from professional acquaintances, interview requests from tech journalists, and, predictably, a terse text from James. "We need to talk. Now." I ignored his message and focused on responding to the professional communications, saving the most important call for last. To my sister Catherine, the only person who had genuinely supported my career ambitions even after I had seemingly abandoned them for marriage. "I just saw the news," she said instead of hello, excitement evident in her voice. "This is brilliant, Vicky, but the timing. Does this have something to do with James?" "Everything and nothing," I replied, grateful for her intuitive understanding. "He and Natalie have been planning to divorce me. I overheard them discussing it at my birthday party." Catherine's sharp intake of breath was followed by a string of colorful expletives. "That absolute bastard! And his secretary? Could he possibly be more cliché?" "Personal assistant," I corrected automatically, then laughed at the absurdity of the distinction. "And apparently they've been orchestrating this for some time. She's set to take a significant role at Lumina once I'm out of the picture." "Well, this director of operations announcement certainly throws a wrench into their neat little plan," Catherine observed. "James must be apoplectic." "I wouldn't know. I haven't spoken to him since I left the house after the party." "Good. Let him stew." I could hear the fierce protectiveness in my sister's voice. "So what's your strategy now, besides running circles around him professionally?" I smiled at her assumption that I already had a comprehensive plan in place. "For now, I'm focused on establishing my leadership at Solaris. The personal reckoning with James can wait." But, as I said it, I knew that the professional and personal were inevitably intertwined. James wouldn't accept this development quietly. His ego wouldn't allow it. My appointment at Solaris wouldn't just complicate his divorce plans. It would represent a direct challenge to his carefully constructed self-image as the superior strategic mind in our relationship. The car Solaris had sent for me arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m. to take me to their headquarters in downtown Austin. I had selected my outfit with meticulous care, a charcoal gray suit that projected authority without seeming to try too hard, paired with the subtle ruby earrings Catherine had given me for my 35th birthday. No wedding ring, no Blackwood family, jewelry that James had presented over the years. Today marked the beginning of a new identity. Solaris's headquarters occupied 12 floors of a sleek glass tower on Congress Avenue. Unlike Lumina's aggressively modern, almost sterile aesthetic, Solaris's offices featured warm wood tones and thoughtfully designed collaborative spaces interspersed with the necessary security features of a cybersecurity firm. Elena met me in the lobby, her presence intended to physically symbolize the passing of leadership. "Ready to meet your team?" she asked with an encouraging smile. "Absolutely," I replied, following her through the security protocols and into a private elevator. As we rode to the executive floor, Elena briefed me on the day's schedule, a company-wide announcement at 9 a.m., followed by meetings with department heads, a strategy session with the product development team, and a late afternoon conference call with major clients to reassure them about the leadership transition. "One thing you should be prepared for," Elena added as the elevator neared our destination. "The press is already speculating about your connection to James. The business channels are running with a competitive angle." I nodded, unsurprised. "And the tabloids?" "Predictably focused on the personal dimension. Your marriage has been featured in enough society pages over the years to make this irresistible to them. Let them speculate," I said with more confidence than I felt. "We'll give them something more substantive to discuss once we announce our new market strategy." The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area where Solaris's executive team waited to greet their new director of operations. I recognized most of them from industry events, though I'd previously interacted with them only in my capacity as James's wife. "Welcome to Solaris, Ms. Blackwood," said Michael Torres, the chief technology officer, extending his hand. I noted his deliberate use of my title rather than Mrs. Blackwood, a small but significant acknowledgement of my changed status. "Thank you, Michael." I'm looking forward to diving into the quantum encryption project you presented at the CyberSec conference last month, I replied, watching his expression shift from polite welcome to genuine interest as he realized I was familiar with his work. One by one, I greeted each executive, making sure to reference specific projects or initiatives they had championed, demonstrating that I was approaching this role having done thorough research rather than trading on my connection to James. The company-wide announcement went smoothly, with Elena formally introducing me to the assembled employees in the main auditorium and via video link to Solaris's satellite offices. I kept my remarks brief but substantive, outlining my vision for expanding Solaris's reach into underserved markets, while maintaining their reputation for technological excellence. While other companies in our space have focused exclusively on high-end enterprise and government contracts, I said, making no direct reference to Lumina but ensuring the comparison was clear. Solaris has an opportunity to democratize cybersecurity, making sophisticated protection accessible to smaller organizations and even individuals who face increasingly complex threats. As I concluded my address and the employees dispersed to their respective departments, my executive assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, who had been with Solaris for 7 years, approached with a tablet in hand. "You have 14 media requests for interviews," she informed me, "and Mr. Blackwood has called the office 3 times already." I smiled at her deliberate neutrality in referring to James. "Thank you, Rachel. Please prioritize the media requests by reach and relevance to our target markets. We'll begin responses tomorrow after I've had a full day with the team. As for Mr. Blackwood, please inform him that I'm in meetings all day and will return his call when my schedule permits." "Of course," she replied, with just the faintest hint of approval in her tone. "Also, the legal team has requested time this afternoon to discuss some confidentiality matters regarding your previous connections." I nodded, appreciating her tactful handling of the delicate situation. "Schedule them for 2 p.m., please. And Rachel, I realize this transition brings some unique complications. I appreciate your professionalism." "It's my job," she said simply, but with a small smile that suggested she might become an ally rather than merely an efficient assistant. The morning progressed with a series of department meetings, each one providing greater insight into Solaris's operations and the challenges they faced in competing with larger firms like Lumina. I was impressed by the caliber of talent Elena had assembled, innovative thinkers who had sometimes been overlooked by more established companies. During a brief break between meetings, I glanced at my phone to find multiple missed calls from James, 2 voicemails, and a text message that simply read, "This is childish and unprofessional. Call me immediately." I deleted everything without listening or responding. James was used to people, especially me, accommodating his schedule, his priorities, his demands. That dynamic had ended the moment I'd overheard him and Natalie plotting at my birthday party. At my lunch meeting with the product development team in Solaris's sleek conference room, I outlined my vision for expanding their consumer-focused security solutions. Lumina has consistently dismissed this market as unprofitable, I explained, but their analysis is fundamentally flawed. They're looking at consumer cybersecurity through the lens of their enterprise model, which creates enormous overhead. "Exactly," exclaimed Sophia Reyes, the brilliant young engineer who headed consumer products. "We've developed a scalable architecture that could deliver enterprise-grade protection at an accessible price point, but we've been struggling to get marketing resources allocated to this division." "That changes today," I assured her. "I want a comprehensive go-to-market strategy on my desk by the end of the week. We're going to move aggressively into this space, while our competitors are still debating whether it's worth their attention." The energy in the room was palpable as the team realized their previously sidelined projects were suddenly central to the company's strategy. This, I reflected, was the kind of leadership I had always wanted to provide, identifying underutilized talent and giving them the resources and authority to innovate. My meeting with Solaris's legal team proved both necessary and enlightening. The chief counsel, a meticulous woman named Vivian Roth, had prepared a comprehensive analysis of potential conflicts arising from my marriage to James. While your non-disclosure agreements with Lumina expired 2 years ago, she explained, there are still gray areas regarding information you may have gained as Mr. Blackwood's spouse rather than as an employee. I understand the concern, I acknowledged. I have no intention of using any confidential information obtained through my marriage. My strategy for Solaris is based on identifying market opportunities that Lumina has deliberately chosen to ignore, not on proprietary technology or client information. Vivian nodded. Nevertheless, we should document this conversation and establish clear protocols for situations where potential conflict might arise. Additionally, we should prepare for the possibility that Lumina might file a nuisance lawsuit alleging trade secret misappropriation, regardless of merit. James wouldn't risk the public relations damage, I said, then reconsidered. Actually, strike that. His ego might override his business sense if he feels sufficiently threatened. Let's prepare for that contingency. By the end of my first day, as director of operations, I had met with every department head, addressed the entire company, and begun laying the groundwork for Solaris's new strategic direction. As Elena and I debriefed in what was now my office, she seemed pleased with how quickly I had established my authority. You've made quite an impression, she observed. The team is energized in a way I haven't seen in months. They just needed someone to recognize their potential, I replied, reviewing the notes Rachel had compiled from the day's meetings. Solaris has all the elements needed to significantly challenge Lumina in multiple markets. The pieces just need to be aligned. Properly, Elena studied me with a thoughtful expression. May I offer one piece of unsolicited advice? Of course. Don't make this personal, she said gently. I understand the circumstances that brought you to Solaris involve profound personal betrayal, but the most effective revenge against James won't be driven by emotion. It will come from clear-headed strategic decisions that benefit Solaris and its shareholders. I considered her words carefully. You're right, I acknowledged finally. This isn't about hurting James. It's about building something better than what he created. Thank you for the reminder. As I left Solaris's offices that evening, I felt a curious blend of exhaustion and exhilaration. The day had been demanding, but for the first time in years, I was channeling my abilities toward my own vision rather than supporting someone else's ambitions. My driver was just pulling away from the curb when a familiar black Tesla cut in front of us, forcing us to brake suddenly. James emerged from the sports car, his normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, his expression thunderous. Really, Victoria, he demanded, approaching my car window. You couldn't return a single call? I had to hear about your new position from Bloomberg. I instructed my driver to remain where we were and lowered the window just enough to speak. I've been in meetings all day, James. Some of us take our professional responsibilities seriously. This is childish, he hissed, leaning closer. You're deliberately trying to complicate our divorce proceedings. If this is a negotiating tactic, not everything is about you, I interrupted coldly. My accepting the director position at Solaris has nothing to do with our divorce and everything to do with my professional capabilities. Capabilities you've consistently undermined and dismissed throughout our marriage. Capabilities, he repeated, incredulously. You've never run anything more complex than our household social calendar. This is clearly Elena's attempt to gain inside information about Lumina's operations. I smiled thinly, unsurprised by his assumption that I could only be valuable as a source of information about him. Your limited perception of my abilities is your problem, not mine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to prepare for tomorrow. This isn't over, Victoria, he warned, stepping back from the car. Gerald will be contacting your attorneys. Your actions have consequences. So do yours, I replied, then signaled to my driver to continue. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of James in the side mirror, standing on the sidewalk, looking uncharacteristically uncertain, a man watching carefully laid plans disintegrate before his eyes. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Saw your announcement press release. You looked like a complete badass. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate?" For the first time since my birthday party, I felt genuine happiness bubbling up. "Absolutely," I replied. "I have stories to tell." 3 weeks into my tenure as Director of Operations at Solaris, the initial media frenzy surrounding my appointment had begun to subside, replaced by growing industry interest in our aggressive new market strategy. I had given select interviews to technology and business publications, carefully steering conversations toward Solaris innovations rather than my personal connection to Lumina's CEO. The Wall Street Journal had been particularly astute in their analysis. Blackwood brings to Solaris not just intimate knowledge of her competitors' blind spots, but a visionary approach to democratizing cybersecurity that challenges industry assumptions about which markets are worth pursuing. James, meanwhile, had shifted from disbelief to barely contained fury as the implications of my new position became clear. His initial attempts to contact me directly had given way to increasingly hostile legal maneuvers, with Gerald sending daily communications to my divorce attorney demanding immediate resolution of our separation agreement. "He's getting desperate," my lawyer Diana Matsuda observed during our weekly update meeting in my Solaris office. "The settlement offer has increased by 25% since you took this position, and they've added a non-competition clause that would require you to step down from Solaris." I laughed without humor. "I assume you told them where they could file that particular clause." Diana smiled, her precisely bobbed hair swinging as she nodded. "In more professional terms, yes. But Victoria, you should be prepared for increasingly aggressive tactics. Gerald has hinted that they're preparing to contest the prenuptial agreement on grounds that you violated its confidentiality provisions." "Let them try," I replied calmly, handing her a folder from my desk. "Here are copies of all non-disclosure agreements I signed with Lumina, along with documentation showing their expiration dates. And here," I added, sliding over a second file, "is evidence that James himself disclosed more proprietary information at social events than I ever have in my professional capacity." Diana raised an eyebrow as she reviewed the documents. "You've been preparing for this possibility for some time." "I've been married to James for 15 years, I said simply. "I know how he operates when he feels threatened." Our conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Rachel entered with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Michael Torres needs to see you immediately. He says it's urgent." I excused myself from Diana and found Michael waiting in the adjacent conference room, his normally composed demeanor visibly shaken. "We've detected an unusual pattern of probes against our network," he said without preamble. "Sophisticated, targeted attempts to identify vulnerabilities in our customer data infrastructure." "A competitor?" I asked, immediately alert. Michael's expression was grim. "The attack patterns match Lumina's proprietary penetration testing methodology." I felt a cold certainty settle in my stomach. "You're saying Lumina is attempting to breach our security?" "Not exactly," Michael clarified. "These aren't actual breach attempts. They're reconnaissance. Someone is mapping our defenses, looking for weaknesses they could potentially exploit later." "And you're certain it's Lumina?" He nodded. "The digital fingerprints are unmistakable. We've studied their methodology extensively. It's one of the most sophisticated in the industry. But they've made no attempt to hide their traces, which is unusual." "They want us to know it's them?" I murmured, understanding dawning. "It's a warning shot." "That would be my assessment," Michael agreed. "The question is, what are they warning us about?" I didn't need to speculate. I knew exactly what had triggered this escalation. 2 days earlier, Solaris had announced a new, small business security solution priced at exactly 40% below Lumina's comparable product. directly targeting a market segment James had always considered securely his. The product had been in development before my arrival, but I had accelerated its launch and approved an aggressive pricing strategy. "Have we been compromised in any way?" I asked. "No, our countermeasures intercepted all probes." But they were thorough, testing every potential entry point. If this was meant as intimidation, they put significant resources behind it. I thanked Michael for the information and asked him to implement our highest security protocols while maintaining detailed logs of any further intrusion attempts. After he left, I remained in the conference room, considering the implications of James's tactics. This wasn't just business. It was personal. James wasn't merely responding to a competitive threat. He was lashing out at me specifically, attempting to shake my confidence in my ability to protect Solaris from Lumina's superior resources. What he failed to understand was that every aggressive move only strengthened my resolve and validated my decision to accept the director position. James thought he was demonstrating his power. In reality, he was revealing his fear. I returned to my office to find Diana reviewing the final documents from our meeting. "Everything all right?" she asked, noting my expression. "Lumina has been probing our network security," I informed her. "Not an actual attack, but a clear message that they could if they wanted to." Diana's expression hardened. "That's walking a very fine legal line. Would you like me to prepare a cease and desist?" I considered the option briefly before shaking my head. "Not yet. Document everything, but let's not show our hand immediately. I have a different approach in mind." After Diana left, I called an emergency meeting with my executive team to outline a new initiative. Effective immediately, we're launching a comprehensive security audit service targeted specifically at Lumina's small and mid-sized clients, I announced to the assembled leadership. "You want to poach their customers directly?" asked Rachel Winters, our chief marketing officer, looking both surprised and intrigued. "I want to offer them a valuable service," I corrected. Lumina's recent focus on expanding their government contracts has left their smaller clients vulnerable to emerging threats. We're going to demonstrate exactly how vulnerable by offering free security assessments that highlight the gaps in Lumina's protective coverage. Michael Torres leaned forward. "We could develop a specialized diagnostic tool that specifically identifies known weaknesses in Lumina's security architecture, areas where they've chosen cost efficiency over comprehensive protection." "Exactly," I nodded. "The tool should be sophisticated enough to provide genuine value while clearly demonstrating why Solaris's approach is superior for these particular clients." "This is aggressive," noted our chief financial officer, James Parsons, though his tone suggested admiration rather than concern. "It's a response," I countered. "Lumina initiated hostilities by probing our network. We're simply demonstrating that the best defense is a superior market strategy." The team dispersed with a new energy, invigorated by the direct competitive challenge. I remained in the conference room, reviewing the quarterly projections that had been prepared before my arrival at Solaris. The numbers were solid but conservative, reflecting Elena's cautious approach in her final quarters before restructuring. My strategy would push Solaris into uncharted territory, potentially risking short-term profitability for longer-term market position. It was a calculated gamble, but one I believed was necessary to capitalize on the window of opportunity created by James's divided attention between Lumina's operations and our increasingly contentious divorce. That evening, I met Catherine for dinner at a small bistro in East Austin, far from the downtown establishments James and I had frequented during our marriage. "You look different," she observed as we settled into our corner table. "More like the Vicky I remember from business school before you started tempering your ambitions to accommodate James's ego." I smiled, recognizing the truth in her assessment. "I feel different. It's exhausting and exhilarating all at once." "And how's our friend James handling your transformation?" she asked, her tone deliberately casual, though her eyes gleamed with interest. "About as well as you'd expect," I replied. summarizing the network probing incident and my strategic response. He's used to being the aggressor in business situations. He doesn't know how to process being challenged on multiple fronts simultaneously. Catherine raised her wine glass in a toast. To James's continuing education. We clinked glasses and I felt a sudden rush of gratitude for my sister's unwavering support. While I had been constructing the perfect corporate wife persona for James's benefit, Catherine had consistently reminded me of the ambitious strategic thinker I'd been before. Marriage had redirected my energies. There's something I haven't told you, I said after a moment. Something I discovered during the security assessment of Solaris's systems when I took over. Catherine leaned forward, instantly alert to the serious shift in my tone. What is it? Lumina has been systematically overbilling government contracts for the past 3 years, I said quietly. Not dramatically enough to trigger automatic audits, but consistently enough that the cumulative amount exceeds $30 million. Her eyes widened. How did you discover this from Solaris's systems? I didn't, not directly. But Solaris handles security for 2 oversight agencies that monitor government contracts. While reviewing their threat assessments, I noticed patterns in the data that seemed familiar from conversations I'd overheard between James and his federal contracts team. And you're certain it's deliberate fraud, not accounting errors? I nodded, grimly. The pattern is too consistent. The amounts too precisely calculated to avoid detection thresholds. This isn't accidental. Catherine set down her fork, her expression serious. What are you going to do with this information? It was the question I'd been wrestling with since making the discovery. The evidence wasn't definitive enough to take directly to authorities, but it provided a powerful leverage point, one that could potentially destroy Lumina entirely if fully investigated. For now, nothing, I admitted. I'm still gathering information, confirming my suspicions before deciding on a course of action. Because despite everything, you're not sure you want to completely destroy James. Catherine's question held no judgment, only understanding. I considered her words carefully. It's not about protecting James. It's about making the right decision, for the right reasons. If I move against Lumina with this information, it needs to be a strategic business decision for Solaris's benefit, not an act of personal vengeance. Catherine studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. You've really stepped into the director role, haven't you? Thinking about shareholders and corporate responsibility rather than just settling personal scores. Don't mistake caution for forgiveness, I clarified. I haven't forgotten what James and Natalie did, but Elena gave me some valuable advice on my first day. The most effective revenge won't come from emotional reactions, but from clear-headed strategic decisions. Wise woman, Catherine acknowledged. Though I wouldn't object if those clear-headed strategic decisions happened to make James and his secretary's lives particularly difficult. I laughed, feeling some of the tension ease. That would be a fortunate coincidence, wouldn't it? Our conversation shifted to lighter topics for the remainder of dinner, but the question of how to handle the contract fraud information remained at the back of my mind. It represented a nuclear option, one that could irrevocably alter not just James's future, but potentially the entire competitive landscape of our industry. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office at Solaris, watching rain streak down the glass as the Austin skyline disappeared into gray mist. So much had changed, yet in some ways, everything had come full circle. Ms. Blackwood, Rachel's voice came through the intercom. They're ready for you in the conference room. Thank you, Rachel. I'll be right there. I gathered the folders from my desk, the final documentation of what had become known in industry circles as the Lumina contract scandal. Today's meeting would close this chapter definitively, both professionally and personally. The conference room held an unlikely gathering. Michael Torres and our legal team from Solaris, 2 Justice Department officials, Elena Chen, who had returned from semi-retirement, to help navigate the crisis. And most surprisingly, Natalie Carson, now operating under a formal immunity agreement. James was conspicuously absent, as he had been since the federal investigation began 3 months ago. The settlement has been finalized, announced Diana Matsuda, sliding copies across the table. Lumina will pay $45 million in fines and restitution, implement comprehensive ethical oversight for all their government contracts, and be subject to quarterly audits for the next 5 years. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. The man I had once loved, built a life with, and later discovered plotting against me at my own birthday party had fallen spectacularly from grace. The contract fraud had been even more extensive than I had initially suspected, with systematic overcharging across multiple agencies. "And Solaris's position?" I asked, turning to Diana. "Fully protected," she confirmed. "Your cooperation has been formally recognized as instrumental to the investigation. The Justice Department has issued a statement commending Solaris's ethical leadership." Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.